Welcome on to a live version of Dunc'd On Prime and the podcast Dunc'd On NBA basketball. So we have so much to talk about here, Danny. And as I went through my day, it was really just a joyous day of basketball after two awesome games last night, and then these ridiculous endings in the first two games of the day: Pistons, Knicks, Lakers, Wolves. Even Orlando, Boston was pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then 6 minutes in to Pacers and Bucks. Damian Lillard with the loose ball rebound, reached back with that left foot in that same motion that we've dread to see so many times to try to get a loose ball rebound. Just the quick reaction when you're not ready. Almost the exact same play that Pacer James Wiseman hurt his Achilles on in, I think it was the first game of the season this year. And he went down, tapped the ball to a teammate, and as soon as he wasn't getting up, you knew. And he knew, and it was just miserable. The air was left out of Pfizer for him. I thought the Bucks broadcast did a really good job of assessing the gravity of the moment and not sugarcoating it. And even during live action, they missed a couple of possessions just following him to the back. They did a really good job covering it. But Damian Lillard almost certainly has a torn Achilles. And it really sucks on a number of levels. And I was so euphoric, but to give this man and almost really this Bucks era its due, I wanted to start here.
It's really tough to take. Lillard, one of my favorite players to watch, and someone who has not gotten, made the conference finals once and got that team wasn't good enough to be in the conference finals, but has been, at times in his career, been the second best point guard in the league, been this massive force. And to think that, assuming it is a torn Achilles, the operating assumption here has to be that Lillard is going to miss the entirety of the 25-26 season. And that the concern is, this is roughly the same age that Kobe Bryant did his, that Lillard will never be the same player that he was. And that's the part of this that is in some ways even harder for me than the year off, is that distinct possibility Lillard will be 36 at that juncture. And so that has huge ramifications, of course, for him personally, though thankfully for him, his money is guaranteed for another couple of years. But this also just has huge ramifications for the Bucks and for the league and everything else. And it's just, it took a lot of the wind out of my sails. I'm happy I went back and watched the last few minutes of the first two games to kind of get my spirit back up, because I was pretty down. I was getting into, like, today was 3-1 day because all the series went to 3-1 when a lot of them would have been more fun at 2-2. I didn't really dwell on that until after Lillard went down, but it does suck.
And Lillard heroically returned from that deep vein thrombosis, did it in shorter time frame than anyone ever had. And he revealed that he basically had not been able to do anything physically until the Sunday, the last day of the regular season, because you can't really. I thought that he could do at least like some cardio stuff. Apparently, he couldn't even really do that, according to what he said. And to just be completely sedentary for a month, other than just like spot shooting, essentially, and then try to come back as quickly as he did for game two. It's obvious why he couldn't come back for game one. I guess it was, it was the last Sunday. So he basically had a week of ramp up, and then with game two, he finally came back and didn't look like himself in that game. I've thought, honestly, all season he's looked a little bit slow. He had dealt with an issue with this Achilles. Remember last year, missed 2 games and then came back and wasn't himself in that game 6, wasn't himself in the overtime of the game 3 either. And we've seen a lot of times with these Achilles ruptures that guys who just have issues with it throughout their career, there's not a lot of blood supply there. You can rest it, but it'll still bother you, and you're more prone if you've had some issues to eventually tearing that. And considering the fact that he just wasn't in great shape, his calves, he just wasn't used to moving around as much. And then also that he'd had previous issues. I think all of that kind of adds up. And that's not to say that anyone is at fault here for him playing. He wanted to come back at his age. This is unfortunately probably his last best chance, remote though it was. And I think he felt a duty to Giannis and to Milwaukee, who traded for him, and just being a competitor to come back. And I just really feel for the guy because he moved to Milwaukee. It was a really trying year for him personally, which he was honest about. Because of the trade, he didn't do as much off-season work in the summer of 23. He was going through a divorce at the same time as moving from Portland, where he had his entire life set up, to Milwaukee. I don't think he ever really wanted to leave Portland, but they could never acquire a player of his caliber or better, and it was never realistic for them to contend for a championship. And it wasn't. There was no reason for him to stay there because they just were embarking on a rebuild, and that was the right thing for the franchise. They probably should have even thought about moving him earlier. And then he didn't get to go where he wanted to, which was Miami. I don't think that would have worked out any better, frankly. And then never even had a real run. Both he and Giannis were injured last year. There was the whole Adrian Griffin saga. It was just nonstop. I don't want to say misery, but nonstop drama. And he's almost certainly now going to end his career unless it's as a bit player. But certainly he will never win a championship as one of the main guys, never make a finals as one of the main guys. And for it to end this way, he handled it with such dignity. Like, he knew he just, like, as he's stoically handled everything and classily handled everything in his career, walked off. But we kind of forget. I just wanted to do this now because, 3-4 years from now, when he retires or tries to make it back and can't, or is playing somewhere as not one of the main guys, like, it's not, and he retires, it's not going to feel the same as it feels in this moment. And I just wanted to take a time to remember how awesome he's been. Those 2 buzzer beaters to win series.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
one of the most clutch players ever, one of the best watches ever. And for him, this is just a career altering and possibly effectively career ending, even though I'm sure he'll come back and play, but he's not going to be a superstar anymore.
No, I mean that's the way we have to treat it, and I would love to be wrong, especially with Lillard of some of the guys who've gone through this, but that's just not the way we have to treat things. And we will, of course, do a Bucks offseason preview closer to everything else, but I think it's worth taking a few beats to go through.
We have to.
The absolute, like, just ludicrously difficult situation that the Milwaukee Bucks are in. John Horst got his extension, but he has some real work to do because Lillard being out, first of all, that makes his contract not even like functionally untradeable. I think it makes it actually untradeable, at least until he returns, whenever that is.
And worth noting briefly, he is actually just starting that extension that he got from Portland right now.
Correct.
So he remember, he signed the designated player veteran extension with 2 years to go. That was the summer of 2019. He is just ending that contract right now. And then he signed a 2-year extension with a 1+1. And I mean, it seems impossible to think that he would play next year. He's got $54 million next year and then $58 million player option the year after that.
And so you have that on the Bucks ledger, and you can't really do anything with that at least at the moment. It's not like you could attach assets or anything like that because the player isn't going to play next year, and who knows what he'll be after that. NBA teams aren't going to take that kind of a. I mean, unless Bradley Beal is willing to waive his no trade, and even then, I don't know that would happen. And so that's a real challenge for the Bucks. And beyond that, if their goal was to like retool or something else, the Bucks do not have unilateral control over their first round pick until 2031. This will become relevant in a separate thing should we discuss that. And so they can't, there isn't a lot for them to retool. Like, let's say they use Kyle Kuzma as matching salary and do something else. But even then, losing Lillard, not being able to replace him kind of within the structure that's catastrophic to your overall talent level. And Giannis can elevate groups. Of course he can. He's been doing that in this series, even though they're down 3-1 now. But this team, unfortunately, whether they retain Brook Lopez or not, in this form, they are done, not just to me as a championship contender, but as a truly relevant team. And I am truly, deeply depressed in that reality.
And I do want to just give this Bucks era credit. I think to some people it was disappointing that Giannis only made one finals and another conference finals during this run, which really began when they hired Mike Budenholzer in 2018. But they had some of the best defenses ever, and that 21 team was one of the best playoff defenses ever. And like the whole organization, they didn't do it perfectly in a lot of ways. And there were a few times maybe when they tried to save money, but compared to their small market brethren, in the end, I think you can say that they left it all out there for Giannis Antetokounmpo. First, there was the Holiday trade. They basically traded everything they could for that. Then the Dame trade, they traded basically everything they could, including Holiday, for that as well, realizing that they weren't going to get there. They got Giannis to extend twice. They went deep into the second apron, more than I think we've ever seen a team of this type of market go into. I mean, the second apron didn't exist, but into the tax in this progressive luxury tax era. I think they had the highest tax bills that any small market ever has. Maybe the LeBron, Dan Gilbert Cavs had that for a couple of years, but they really went for it. But it just is going to be over now. Like they can't. The most they can do is be like a 45, maybe a 50-win team with Giannis at his age 31 season, leaving everything out there on the floor as he kind of had to do this year. And like at that age, that's probably not really a great thing for him anymore either. And to just have 54 million in dead salary, they don't have a way to move it. I don't think, and even if they did, like they weren't anywhere close to good enough this year, even if they, and I think, I don't know that having a healthy Lillard would have necessarily changed things in this series. Their defense, they just got pretty much run off the floor. Brook Lopez is not really able to have an impact in this series, and he's a free agent, and they've been incredibly expensive for a long time. They did get out of the second apron, but they're pretty sure there's a repeater tax. So I think it just, again, they're not going to move Giannis until he asks to be moved. But based on the comments that he has had about wanting to contend for a championship, and Chris Haynes is pretty close to that situation. Obviously, his cousin, I think, is Giannis's girlfriend. Obviously, the Dame situation as well. He said that he doesn't think Giannis is going to finish his career in Milwaukee on the Dan Patrick Show. So if that's what he wants to do, I don't begrudge him that in any way. But given the paucity of assets, they've thrown everything into this era. It was a great era, the best in Milwaukee basketball since Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But it deserves a lot of appreciation. And, they already traded away Chris Middleton. Unfortunately, he'd broken down. And so now it's coming to an end. Whether Giannis is on the team or not, it's come to an end.
Well, and first of all, thank goodness he was able to return in 2021. Like, remember, we thought that knee injury might keep him out for the entire rest of
everyone did
at that playoffs, and he comes back. Not only comes back, but is awesome, is the Finals MVP. And that, while there are a lot of accomplishments as a team, as an individual that are not a championship, I'm extremely happy that this group got one. And there are a lot of wonderful teams, wonderful runs, including the Harden Rockets that don't get that. Harden Rockets didn't even make a finals. And so I'm really happy. Yes, they only made one, but they did make one and they won it. And
and Giannis had one of the best NBA finals games ever to clinch that title as well in that game 6.
He did. And so John Horst is going to be in a complicated situation. Now, Giannis is he's the first domino in this, and he is a decider. He has earned the right to make that decision. And this will be an interesting test of this non-American or European star player asking out. It still has never truly happened. Maybe it does, and this would be, you could argue, the exception that proves the rule, because it's a circumstance where the decision could not be more stark. This team is not ready to compete, and Giannis is. Like, I don't know what 32-year-old Giannis is going to be in terms of like the, when we do top 10 players and all that type of stuff, but he absolutely can be a force on a championship team, and if he wants to, he deserves to be in those late series, to play in May and June. And so if that's what he wants, it's what I want for him, but it's more important what he wants, and we'll have to see.
The Pacers played a wonderful game. Obviously, the Bucks, with what happened to Dame, were deflated, but the Pacers put up a cool 138 offensive rating, and I don't think Dame would have really changed that a ton. And some of the Bucks who were so good before struggled. Gary Trent went from 34 points to 6. Kyle Kuzma, Brook Lopez couldn't get it going at all. And Kevin Porter Jr. had a nice game, but other than he and Giannis, they just ran out of bodies. And then the Pacers offense was unbelievable. They had some nice counters to how they were forcing Tyrese Haliburton left, and they just took advantage of that, got him into the lane. He had 15 assists plus 25. I thought he was, even though he didn't take as many twos as I still would like, but he got in the lane enough, set guys up. They shot 18 of 39 from 3, ran it down the Bucks' throats. I mean, they looked really, really good. And that series against the Cavs is going to be an awesome series that I'm very much looking forward to. I just hope the Pacers and Cavs both make it out of their next games uninjured.
Yeah, and
Darius
ideally,
Garland is dealing with that toe issue, but everyone else seems pretty healthy. So.
And ideally make it out of their next series healthy too, because the Pacers have had a lot over the last couple of years of injuries. And for me, another huge number from Game 4, Indiana, 1.7 points per transition play, which is incredibly high. They were getting downhill. That was a part of how their backup units were so successful. There was that beautiful play at the pass at the end of, I believe that was the third quarter, where Haliburton threw it to Obi Toppin, who got it in right before time expired. Obi Toppin, by the way, 13 points in 14 minutes, 5 of 7 from the field, 3 of 4 from 3. And yeah, the Pacers played a really good game. I was kind of in my feelings of during it, but their performance definitely, like, we should appreciate it, because they did a great job in an unusual circumstance with a star player going down the way he did.
You could certainly very easily have a let up in that situation, and they didn't even make it close. Miles Turner had a huge bounce back. He had 4 blocks, 9 of 13 from the field, but a lot of that was from 2. It was not him picking and popping for 3s. And then Jarris Walker actually was 4 of 5 from 3. A little bit of that came in garbage time, but he's actually been shooting the 3 pretty well. He doesn't have the quickest release, and he's at least a body defensively that they're able to throw on Giannis. Ben Mathurin had an abdominal contusion after an encounter at the rim with Giannis. So I think as far as the actual game, don't have a ton more to say on this. I think we can probably move on to Lakers Wolves.
And boy, were the first 2 games, but Lakers Wolves at part of the forefront of it. Were they fun, memorable, impactful games? And I think the place we have to start with this one is JJ Redick's decision to play the 5 players who started the second half, which is not his 5 starters, because Jackson Hayes still started this game, for the entirety of the second half, something that we have not seen in a playoff game. And
yeah, people are like, hey, you should really start this lineup. JJ was like, oh, you want to see this lineup? I'm going to give you this fucking lineup.
And there, I mean, first of all, we could take a beat to acknowledge how astonishing that is to play all those guys, including a 40-year-old LeBron James. But we'll get into the substance of the game. The place I want to start and kind of discussing that.
Can we talk a little bit more about the lineup here? I think.
Oh, sure.
Number one, I don't think that happens, and I've seen a number of tweets about how rare this was for a coach to make no substitutions for an entire half in a playoff game. And I don't think it happens if David Adelman doesn't do something very similar with the Nuggets yesterday. I would actually say the Lakers have a little bit more usable depth than the
I agree.
Nuggets do. But it totally just like made it acceptable. JJ follows the whole league. Obviously, the Nuggets did win barely after blowing a huge lead in the fourth quarter, as the Lakers kind of did as well. And I think JJ was just like, hey, this is working. They went immediately on a 12-0 run to start the second half. Wolves were shell-shocked. They had their bigs out there, and I think Chris Finch kind of struggled with how he wanted to match up until finding something, I thought, late as they got fatigued. But I think ultimately, as much as it's like, okay, we're not tired, like JJ said he was asking the guys about it. Dorian Finney-Smith was asked about it. Yeah, of course they're going to say we're not tired. But this is just down 2-1. Like, yeah, the series is probably over if you lose. Although not as over as if you don't have home court advantage in the series. Like, people come back from 3-1. That's not impossible to do when you have 2 home games remaining. Although I think the Wolves have been largely playing better than the Lakers and also playing better clutch basketball than the Lakers, which we'll talk about. But I think ultimately, like, Gabe Vincent is a good enough player that you could have him out there and not lose that much. And like, he's actually even a better defensive player than Austin Reeves is, for example. He probably should have been in for some of those defense-only possessions if, he hadn't been encased in ice on the bench at halftime. And so, like, he at least would be someone that you could get in there, at least to rotate out LeBron and Reeves and Luka for like 2 minutes each. And it really is more psychological, I would say. A sports scientist would probably say, yeah, like, being out for 2 minutes of action, does that really matter when there's all these timeouts and stuff? Maybe it does. Maybe there's something to sitting for 6 minutes instead of 3 in terms of your recovery. But I think more psychologically, just guys know this is a departure from the norm. And you can send a message to your team that it's desperate and they should play harder, but you also send a message to your team that it's desperate and you're only going to win unless you do something crazy. And I think that is an attitude that can infect the team a little bit. And also just psychologically, if you just know, well, I haven't had any rest, like, maybe it's a little bit harder to motivate. Maybe some of it is psychological. Maybe it's psychological just in the sense that you don't get a mental break from having to just play 24 straight minutes of basketball or 46 out of 48 minutes of basketball. Just be able to, like, sit on the side and watch a couple of possessions, like, get hyped up to go back in instead of, like, trudging back out to the court. Whatever it is, simply the fact that this was so odd. And they have a lot of great players and veterans and stuff. Like, I don't want to say that it lost them the game. I think they should have found a way to at least sub in a little bit.
I agree. And Gabe Vincent is probably the best example because they also wouldn't need Vincent to, like, run the offense or anything like that. And
or I mean, here's the other thing too. Gabe Vincent and Vanderbilt are actually probably the 2 best guys you have to guard Anthony Edwards.
Right.
Like, give him a different look. Show him something other than just, we're going to soft switch and then zone up. They finally would double team, like, very late in the game, but Ant was ready for that. But, like, put someone on him who has the energy to just deny him the ball. He plays the whole second half, I think, too. Like, get someone out there who can tire him out a little bit, right? Like, just something different against him, because, I mean, what they did against him in these 2 games didn't work at all in any way. All right, sorry, I interrupted you, but I thought just because that was such a rarity, and especially we've had these 2 back-to-back, I wanted to get into it. So what was your next point?
Well, I want to mention Anthony Edwards did play the whole second half. He played, and Julius Randle played all but 31 seconds. So,
yeah.
But there were other subs, and we'll talk about some of those being impactful. But for me, the other reason why I think it was a mistake for the Lakers is, do you need to play all of these players all of this time? And LeBron James, Luka Doncic, Austin Reeves, though he didn't have the greatest overall performance, had some issues early in the game and then had a couple of big misses late. Those players are they're additive offensively, but they are a little bit superfluous, especially like you could argue with Reeves or with Luka. Like LeBron didn't even do that much offensively during like large stretches of the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
So
he was
maybe
great defensively. They needed
oh yeah.
everything he could give defensively.
But so maybe you buy each of them a couple of minutes, and you could also, do the trick. I always think of it with Jason Kidd, where you get somebody a little bit of rest right before one of the mandatories, and so they get a little bonus rest in there. Pick a couple spots with that, and you you get some fresh players. You get to show some different looks out there, and the beauty of having I know that part of the logic here is the beauty of having these multiple lead creators is that it takes some of the playmaking burden off of each. And that helps. That's part of what made it plausible for some of these guys to do it. But you can also just have one of them off the floor and you're still okay for these minutes. So I disagree with it in theory. And I didn't see the Lakers as overtly tired as the Nuggets were on Saturday night. But their rotations were a little bit flat. Their defensive execution wasn't fantastic. There were some of Luka's shots were a little bit short, and maybe that happens if he gets 2 minutes of rest too. It's very possible, but I don't think that Redick put his team in the best situation to succeed, and I don't think it's like a catastrophic mistake or anything like that. But I don't agree with it.
The next place we have to go is just Anthony Edwards. Again, he's been the best player in the series. It hasn't been close. The 2 games in LA, he struggled to finish some. He struggled to finish the first half of game 3. Had a few finishing foibles in this game too, but just from a distribution standpoint, he's been really, really solid. 9 assists in game 1, and was been good enough as a passer. That's the biggest thing that we complained about for him throughout this year, like why he was not in the upper echelon of players is because he just wasn't able to take advantage of the defensive attention that he's drawn. I also thought he just hasn't taken as many threes either, and he's just been relentless getting the basket. 14 of 17 from the foul line, and he was 7 of 13 from 2, 5 of 10 from 3 still, which is but Edwards really he used that three-pointer most of the game and in most of the series as more of a counter when someone is really backing off of him. Like he really was not looking to take that shot. And in game 2, he kind of got flummoxed a little bit by just taking some bad jumpers or just moving the ball. Since then, that Lakers shell where they're getting guys way up out of the corners, trying to show almost a 3-guard front against him off these switches that they're willing to do. Ant has handled those. He's either just blown by the guy so badly that the nail help didn't even matter and then finished at the rim, or if he was able to get 2 on the ball and force them to really commit, then he's able to find guys also. And or he would get double teamed even and was able to get out of that and then make the play too late. He has been in this series, admittedly against a defense that's not exactly ridiculous, but he did that against the Denver Nuggets, kind of a similar defense in terms of not having the rim protection and not having a ton of defensive stoppers on the perimeter, but like a good defense in terms of executing and having smart players. Like they couldn't deal with him schematically. That was probably the biggest reason I think they lost that series last year. And he's had that problem again. And then on defense, totally erased Austin Reeves as a playmaker going one-on-one. And like there was one play at the end of the game where Edwards sort of like was turned around, wasn't he really looking at Reeves? Reeves tried to attack him with his back turns. Edwards turned around, saw him, just took one slide and just completely stopped him. Like he is just so physically dominant as a defender that you just can't get by. I mean, even guarding LeBron, it's been difficult for LeBron when that's been the matchup. Like those 2 guys getting into it and like shoving each other was awesome too. But like Anthony Edwards, it's time. I would say we'll see what happens in the next series, which will be fascinating no matter who they face. I don't think the series is totally over yet, but if they do advance. But I really, and then obviously if they were to go up against Oklahoma City, that would be even more ridiculous, or the Clippers for that matter. So he's
Yep.
going to have quite the gauntlet to run. This is the easy part for him individually, at least as an offensive player, maybe not on defense. But he has now, this is, I would say, 4 straight years that he's raised his game in the playoffs.
And Edwards' ability to ramp up his defense and to have the capability, and also in this case the energy to do it, is makes him a really dangerous player. Makes him it's sometimes hard to rank in top 10 players in that kind of context because he can do it, and but not in the regular season necessarily because that's a lot to ask. And to me that dovetails perfectly into the next big theme for me, which is a continuation of Game 3, and that is Edwards' drive game, the offense working so much better when Rudy Gobert is off the floor. And that isn't as much about Rudy Gobert as I think some believe it to be. It is because Gobert's hands are bad. He was 1 of 6 from the field, all right next to the
He
basket.
had this one absolutely comical sequence where they threw it up to him on an alley-oop. He didn't catch it, kind of hit it off the bottom of the rim, came down from less than a foot away above the rim, somehow curled it out, and then got the rebound again and immediately got stripped and lost it. He at least had one nice tip dunk, but he was 1 of 6. And he also hit a couple of free throws. He was 3 or 4, had 7 offensive rebounds. It was actually better than it has been, but he also had 3 turnovers,
Well,
and it was rough.
and remember, while we're on the Gobert roast front, the first play of the game was a post up on Austin Reeves that went nowhere. And that was,
Yeah, he just immediately got stripped as he
but
turned
yeah.
sideways. Yeah.
And so a lot of attention on Gobert's defense as flaws. I think that part of it is overstated. But the other big story of not having Gobert on the floor, opening up the offense, it's about who the replacement is, and that's Naz Reid. And Naz Reid is a very good shooter. He is a confident shooter, and you correctly brought up how it took the Minnesota Timberwolves a while to adjust to the Lakers starting their 5 and then kind of how to incorporate it. But then the Lakers had real trouble, as they did in Game 3, adjusting to Naz Reid being the 5th guy as opposed to it being Rudy Gobert, because it changes the structure of your help principles. Naz Reid is a better transition force, which was something that Rudy Gobert isn't necessarily, other than that weird layup in Game 3. And so there was that one massive Naz Reid trail 3, and I think part of the reason that happened was because the Lakers weren't mentally in that, oh crap, the guy who's not in the play right now doesn't have to get all the way here. He can just drill the 3 as he's coming up. And so the Lakers just weren't really on it. Reid +9 in his 20 minutes. And the +9 there isn't just Reid playing well, which he did. It's what he opens up for everyone else.
Yeah, they can run a play for him too, right?
Mhm.
They ran that little split cut play with Randall at the left elbow and DiVincenzo screening for him. They got a 3 on an ATO out of that. And then he also was able to make plays on the short when they went to the double team and screened for Edwards. He got off the ball. LeBron stopped him one time. That was actually, I think that was a missed shot instead of just a turnover. Then that was Naz Reid's first miss in the fourth quarter in this series. He had been 9 of 9, I think, until then. And then he made the key play of the game too, where Ant got doubled, got it to him at the free throw line. He threw a beautiful bounce pass past LeBron to McDaniels for the go-ahead dunk. And so it was, he was awesome. And then the biggest thing too, that again, Naz Reid just manages to take steps forward defensively every year. And at the beginning, he had a really nice defensive performance. I would say, maybe it was a little bit overrated because he had some nice blocks on Jokic in that game too, but he was good in that Denver series last year. And then the Reid Randall thing just was terrible defensively all season. Part of that was because Chris Finch did not pair them with Jaden McDaniels, who also struggled defensively to start the year. And also, I think Julius Randle was not what he has eventually become in this series. And so those two guys, Randle and Naz Reid, being able to just stay in front of Luka and LeBron pretty competently, I thought was awesome. And when Chris Finch, like the big problem that Minnesota had when the Lakers were up and late third, early fourth, was they started double teaming Luka, and they had success with that early, forcing some turnovers because Luka was just like the guy was coming up to screen for Luka when he was at a dead stop, like millimeters over the half court line, and that they forced a couple turnovers. Once the Lakers like got their shit together on the spacing, they were getting out of that and then getting Hachimura a bunch of plays. He had 10 points in the third. And then they tried to go super small with Randall at center. That didn't work. But then once they brought in first Gobert and then Reed and went back to their identity and then also started switching when the Lakers were a little bit more tired, like that worked pretty well. Minnesota generally got the better shots down the end of the game.
They did. And getting to some lineups that really worked, and part of the joy of the playoffs is that these revelations may not be relevant at all in the next series, or maybe they will be in a subsequent one over time. Like that's the fun of this, is you'll get completely different styles and completely different fights should the Timberwolves advance. And I'm glad you brought up Randall, because he's the next thing I wanted to discuss, which was he didn't have the greatest, like efficiency game, 9 to 22 from the field, though he had 0 turnovers. Minnesota only had 9 as a team. Lakers only had 10. It's a low turnover game. But Randall's energy, I thought, made a huge difference. And doing that while playing 43 minutes, the best of those was he saved a possession and even went beyond that. There was a rebound that looked like it was just going to go out of bounds. He flew over there and drew a foul on Dorian Finney-Smith, like basically created more than something out of absolutely nothing. And part of his 7 rebounds. And
there was the one play where he ran down an offensive rebound on the baseline, was just getting hacked, no call, and he's like, all right, this is what we're doing. I'm going to just go right through everybody for a layup, a reverse layup. Like that was awesome. Like he was the baddest guy in this game, in a game that had all these kind of alphas. I mean, maybe you could say that was Anthony Edwards because he was from a scoring standpoint, but just in terms of like the effort level, rebounding, like he actually, to me, was the guy who was just the most physical and the most forceful. And that kept the Wolves in the game in the first half too.
It did. And Minnesota had a lot of problems in the early part of the game. I thought, like, just kind of getting their heads on straight, weird turnovers, weird defensive flubs, but Randall's effort helped keep them on board. And yeah, I thought he made a huge difference. It kind of allowed everything else to straighten out without being too far down. And a lot of times that ends up being really important, because you need to kind of keep things together enough for the comeback or just the improved play to get there. And another important thread, we're going to talk when we go through the end of this game about a lot of praise on LeBron James' defense, and deservedly so. He had a number of gargantuan defensive plays late. LeBron James in the fourth quarter, offensively, took 2 shots, missed both of them, 1-3 and 1-2.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you what both of them were. They were both in the last 5 minutes. One, they ran like a really nice ATO. That was one of the lessons for me, by the way, of this game was, hey, when you actually run something, particularly when everyone is exhausted, like both teams were getting pretty good looks, but they just, particularly the Lakers, just devolved into screen ISO basketball. Luka dribbled the air out of the ball in particular too much. But they ran this beautiful play out of the opposite corner where LeBron did a face cut, just totally beat his man. They faked like they're going to do on a wide pin down. He just face cut right in front. I think it was Randall. And then Anthony Edwards just saw it, came over, and forced LeBron to miss the layup. And then the other one was Luka was in an ISO with like 7 on the shot clock. They shaded over to LeBron, threw it to him, and LeBron has Julius Randle closing out at him, but he's got like 29 feet. And he just like took a 3 with 7 on the shot clock. Like he absolutely could have just put the ball on the floor, gotten past Randall, forced help, and then maybe set up another shooter who was closer. Like the other guys were making their spot ups pretty well. And it just, maybe he was tired, but there's been talk, obviously, that he's been dealing with this groin issue still, but he just wasn't able to be aggressive enough in the fourth quarter.
And LeBron was only 1 of 2 from the field in the third quarter as well, but he got to the line there, and that was, of course, another important part of his game.
Particularly when Rudy Gobert just elbowed him in the head for no reason, and Rudy Gobert got a technical and a flagrant foul somehow on the same play. I didn't see what he did to get the tech. Oh no, it was Finch who got the technical.
It was Finch who got the tech.
Yeah.
And so LeBron 15 of 18 from the free throw line overall in the game, but all 18 of those free throws came in the first 3 quarters, and all but I believe 2 of them came in the first half. And so LeBron.
What did you look up, by the way? That was like the 3rd most free throws he'd ever had in a playoff game.
No, it was like the 7th most, but it was like the most he's had since 2020, and then the most he'd had since 2017. If he had gotten even a couple more later in the game, then it would have gotten up to like the 4th or 5th.
Yeah, like in his like the first time around in Cleveland when he was just a relentless driver, I'm sure he had.
Yeah, there was a game in that 09 Cavs where he had 24 free throws and they lost to the Magic 99-89. It's like a bygone era. And so LeBron, he didn't have the ball in his hands a ton. He didn't do a ton offensively. He was massive defensively. And then he also, he only had 2 assists in the 4th quarter. He had a number in the 3rd of like those kind of the quick passes to Rui Hachimura were the ones that I remember most. And he did have 1 turnover, which was extremely important. We will talk about that later on.
Yeah, it's crazy how low of a turnover game this was. I mean, the Wolves ultimately won the possession game. Again, 18 offensive rebounds to 11. Dorian Finney-Smith was really good on the offensive glass, particularly in the first half. But then it was the Wolves who really did that. Jaden McDaniels also was really good again. He was so good in game 3 because they would tilt the defense over towards Ant or whoever the ball handler was. With Lucas, they would go after Reeves, and then Luka would sort of be loading off of McDaniels. They'd throw it to him. Instead of him shooting the jumper, he would just blow right by Luka. Luka, again, gave up a million blow-bys. Jerry Engelman has been talking about this for a while, that he's basically in the tracking era. In 22 and 24, he's given up more blow-bys per possession, basically, than anyone ever has off the dribble, according to the tracking data.
Defense wins championships.
Yeah, well, yeah, and also being honest, like Luka wore down again. He had a great first half, and then he had 7 points, but some of that was getting to the foul line in the 4th. I don't think he hit a 3 in the 4th.
Nate, if Isaiah Thomas is the king of the 4th, then Luka's the king of the 1st.
And this has been a problem for him for a while. Like that happened even in the 21 series as well, that classic series against the Clippers, where he just wasn't able to dominate quite that much late. Now he did it, of course, at the end of the series against the Wolves last year. But yeah, he was not able to come out of Target Center, where he was 3-0 in last year's playoffs with the win, and may not if the Lakers are going to win the series, he will have to get a win in Target Center now. Any other like strategic things, player usage, anything of note that stuck out to you?
Oh, more on the strategic element. I think we've covered that pretty well. I have a couple of notes from before the end of the game that I'd like to get to, but I don't know if you want to do that kind of separately.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
First of all, another bizarre Josh Tiven replay review decision on these. This was a play with Austin Reeves and Rudy Gobert. And at first I was mad because I thought that, so it was basically the play was that Rudy Gobert, as the Wolves are on offense, Gobert is doing the kind of the NBA version of a pick play where he's moving through the Lakers defense, slows down, and then is contacted by Austin Reeves. And so to me, the way that should be ruled, whether it's the interpretation now or it isn't, is that is an illegal screen, because he was in that place for that reason. But also
it's a point of education a couple years ago that
exactly.
if you're rolling, that like you can't use your roll to impede someone trying to get through the screen, which is exactly what he did.
Exactly what he did, exactly what Gobert intended to do as well. So I was frustrated by that and like the possibility they were going to get that wrong. However, I got even more frustrated when Tiven actually gave his explanation, because his explanation was factually wrong. He said that Reeves made contact first. You can watch the replay a bunch of different times. That isn't what happened. Gobert contacted Reeves with his arm before Reeves did it. So, like, maybe this is the lawyer part for both of us. It's like, if you make the wrong decision because you interpreted things weirdly, that's fine. But making a factual mistake when you just spent the last 3 minutes reviewing one single incident, that's really bad to me. And so that really frustrated me. Don't really need to
Yeah.
get too far.
And well, I mean, it's just something for our live shows that we keep in mind. It's just like that is supposed to be a foul on, and we talk about all the time where, hey, if someone is trying to set a screen on a handoff or something and they're running, you as a defensive player, you should just run into them and it'll be a foul on them. Reeves did wrap his arm around Gobert because it was a big play too. That was Reeves.
It was going to
think
be
that
either
really,
of their third fouls. It was
yeah,
going to be
yeah.
Gobert's, and it was Reeves.
And it's worth talking about because that I think kind of set the tone for JJ just being like, fuck it, we're going all in with LeBron and Luka. They both played 22 minutes in the first half because Reeves basically sat. They were very concerned about having him out there with the 3 fouls because he's a pigeon for Minnesota. And so it was a huge play for him to go out. And the Wolves made a nice comeback at the end of the first half when Reeves was out. But Reeves did wrap his arm around Gobert after the initial contact, but it all was necessary because Rudy Gobert was doing something illegal. Yeah, what was your next thing?
The Wolves ended up winning the game, but if they hadn't, and there will be one in the Detroit Knicks game as well. One of those weird things that swings that Rudy Gobert goaltended a Conley, I wrote in my notes, pass/shot, where Conley threw it up. I think he threw it up for Gobert, but Gobert got it over the cylinder. And so instead of it being 2 points, it's a 0 and ball going the other way for Minnesota.
Let me see if I had anything else from the meat of the game here that stood out to me. And the plus minuses for the Laker bench weren't terrible. Yeah, I get it. Jordan Goodwin's not that good of a player, and Vanderbilt gives Gobert somewhere to hide and lets them help a little bit. But it just the offenses were so good. You could have just made it a little harder for yourself to score while also actually playing some defense. Minnesota had a 128 offensive rating this game, and the Lakers had a 125 offensive rating, in part because of so few turnovers. Dante DiVincenzo had 5 steals, didn't have his best scoring game, picked up some fouls, but I thought he was still really important with his activity. Nickeil Alexander-Walker didn't really play very much, missed a couple of threes, had a couple of turnovers. DiVincenzo was kind of more the guy to go to there. And
Mike Conley got a block on LeBron. That was surprising.
Yes. Yeah, that was a big play. I mean, Conley was 0-4 from 3, but they got minutes out of him, right? You just JJ Redick's oh, well, he's not ideal in the series. He can't guard him. We're just not going to play him. And, they got enough out of him to where, and DiVincenzo had a ton of energy late. Naz Reid had a ton of energy late. Those guys were in the closing lineup, but they only played 29 and 20 minutes. I think that's a big reason why the Wolves were able to pull it out in the end. Let me see if I got anything else here in my notes. Yeah, the Lakers did try to do a little bit of zone. That didn't work particularly well. I thought that was just the one other thing that they kind of tried. And yeah, Rui Hachimura, I'm just kind of torn on what to think of him. It would be nice for them if he was either a little bit better rim protector or a little bit better moving his feet. Offensively, he's been very solid for them. He's made his shots. He was able to make plays off of advantage situations, finished at the rim. He had 23 points on 16 field goal attempts. He was exactly what they needed lower on the floor, particularly when they get penetration and create an advantage situation. But he also was someone that Anthony Edwards was very eager to attack, and that he was able to get past. And Edwards is obviously a bear, but it was interesting to me of okay, why are they calling up Anthony Edwards instead of Reeves, or sorry, calling up Hachimura instead of Reeves or instead of Luka? And I think the reason was they're well, you know what? Edwards can get by Hachimura, so let's have him get by that guy. And then there's Hachimura is their second best rim protector. There's only just LeBron back there. We could talk about LeBron's defense though in the fourth quarter. How many stops did he? He probably had like 8 or 9 stops throughout the game. He was credited with 3 steals and 3 blocks. Maybe he should have had another steal or block. We'll discuss that when we get there as well. It still was crazy to see LeBron only 9 field goal attempts though. And then Reeves, 6 of 14, 5 of 12 from 3 though. And he took a couple, most of the ones that he made were open shots that were created by someone else. He really was not another creator. And much was made of the fact that Luka only had 2 assists. I don't think that was nearly as damning because so many of their plays in the second half came out of the double team where he made the initial pass that they then carved him up after that. And they had 23 assists on 36 field goals for an ISO game like this. That wasn't that bad. Or you can argue that Luka should have got in the lane more, forced help more. But I think this has been a indication of why it is that Luka needs that roller, that he needs one more passing option that's really going to suck in the defense. The reads, he's not as dominant one-on-one, I would say, as he used to be, right? Like if you go back to what he did playing 5 out in that 2022 season, like he's not as good now as he was then, I would say. And maybe after more getting in shape, he might be. So he's not as good as he was then. And so having that role man forces the defense to make a decision. Also, it just invites teams to not switch on him and play more of a conventional coverage, or to play more of a double teaming coverage at the point of attack. And then because they're just worried once he gets inside the arc, he's such a good passer. It's either going to be corner 3 or it's going to be a dunk.
Yeah. I mean, the comparison is like what James Harden's been doing for the Clippers the last few days.
Yeah. And Mark Williams, let's say they hadn't rescinded the trade. They obviously gave up a ton to get him. I felt like even at the time it was a future-focused trade because Mark Williams is just not ready. Would Mark Williams give them more than Jackson Hayes? Yeah, he would probably be like pretty decent offensively in this series, and that would at least be something. But and Anthony Edwards is not like such an unbelievable pick and roll operator. Or maybe they would have enticed him to leave Rudy Gobert back in the floor. Now, Gobert could have maybe been more impactful defensively with the center to guard. But I think actually Gobert has been really good. Like getting out to some of those Hachimura pick and pops at the top. Like he was flying. He actually, I thought, was very good defensively in this game. It just was the offense that was killing him and why he was -11. So, but Mark Williams is just such a bad defensive player. And I think Edwards would have just blown by him in any sort of pick and roll coverage. And okay, would he have played 15 minutes instead of Jackson Hayes' 4? Got like a true Bogans instead of an ultra Bogans? Sure. But if they could have got, a Clint Capella or something like that in a trade, then yeah, maybe that sort of player would have made a difference in this series, but not someone who is a terrible defender, which Mark Williams is. And who knows, he might have got hurt if he really had to play playoff minutes and ramp up. You never know on that too. So I think they made the right decision to rescind, even knowing that they couldn't get another center. I think they made the correct decision to rescind the trade.
Since I actually looked, I pulled the number now. Rudy Gobert played 26 minutes. The Timberwolves had a 108.5 offensive rating during that stretch. They had a 126.1 overall. So that means they were roughly in the 140 range when Gobert was off the floor.
Yeah, and this is we're going to get to the other game too, but this Randall Towns DiVincenzo Pistons first round pick trade just gets more and more ridiculous to try to evaluate. Wolves, if the Wolves win this series, I think you have to say they probably did win the trade because all the future stuff pointed in their direction. So, and they're going to get pretty much to where they got last year.
Who knows? Right. They may even get further. I don't think so, but they could.
Yeah, I don't know if they're gonna beat the Clippers or the Thunder in the second round. Or, I mean, if maybe it'd be the Nuggets, that still could happen too. End of the game. Let me actually scroll up to my notes here. So after that LeBron cut out of the corner that Edwards stopped, Edwards gets Luka switched onto him, goes to the step back. Luka hits him on the elbow, and Edwards gets 3 free throws. That gives Minnesota lead. I think all these I don't think anybody missed a free throw in the last 5 minutes of the game for either team, which was pretty clutch, especially considering how exhausted.
That is correct. There were no missed free throws in the last 5 minutes.
And then they ran a Luka LeBron pick and roll to get Randall onto Luka. And McDaniels doubled, I thought, too early. Like, Luka had hit a step back on Randall earlier. That was pretty good defense from Randall without fouling. And I thought the Wolves, because part of the reason they're double teaming too on Luka was that he was hitting his step back. And I thought they overreacted to that a little bit too much, because especially because Luka can wear down. I think they should have just been living with, like, they shouldn't have gone away from the strategy that's largely worked in this series. Like, the Lakers had their best offensive game of the series easily in this one. And it was essentially because they started double team, I thought. And also they hit a bunch of threes, but they got a lot of open threes, like Hachimura and Reeves. Pretty much all their threes were off of some sort of double teaming or being set up.
And again, familiar refrain in these playoffs. What bothered me most about the doubling was that it's not like Luka was killing them one-on-one. Like
yeah, I mean, he hit some step backs, and I think they just reacted to that. Maybe you could say he was, but I didn't think that was going to continue.
No, and there was a play where I can't remember if this is in the last 5 minutes. I'm trying to find it in my notes where Luka was Naz Reid and got 1-on-1, and he just took a tough step back and like didn't make that one. And it's just like, to me, there has been a lot of between low resistance switching and doubles. There's a lot of this too in the Nuggets Clippers series. Teams are too afraid of things they shouldn't be too afraid of.
Well, I mean, Luka did torture them pretty badly in the last season. If any team should have PTSD, it'd be the Wolves. But I think this is a different Luka to me, and a different. And Rudy Gobert was not on the floor. And where Luka really killed them, step back to win game 2 aside, was that he got it in the lane and was setting up guys for dunks, and Gobert wasn't able to deal with that. Edwards, I thought the one bad decision that he made was he got Reeves on him and just took this really difficult fading 2 from about 21 feet on the left wing without really trying him. That was definitely a settle.
Well, the Luka Nas play, it was the one right before Anthony Edwards, and then the next play I thought was also an Edwards mistake, but it didn't end up hurting them. I thought Edwards, he did a little over helping off of Austin Reeves. Like, he was kind of trying to get into the middle to shut something down that didn't really need him being there. And then Reeves gets a wide open above the break 3 and missed it. And yeah, sure, Austin Reeves missed a couple of open shots here. That in no way, shape, or form makes that a good decision. It's just that he missed a couple of them.
Then Ant had another one of these passes that he's been throwing in this series. Ridiculous plays where he just drives along the right side, kind of just gets in the air as he's fading into the baseline, and then throws a pass out to a shooter. This time it was DiVincenzo, who just had no one in front of him and just loaded up and took off, went right through Rui for a foul and the bucket. That was a huge play. I mean, the swings in momentum of this game down the end were just absolutely ridiculous.
And it was fun watching it again, because also we got we did this game on playback, and so then when you're watching it live, then you get the call, and so you're remembering, it's like, yeah, the Minnesota Timberwolves went up 4 after an and 1 with 2 minutes to go, and it felt like, oh, this is the end. This is like what it was last time. Not so fast, my friend. The Lakers then get.
Oh, sorry, I skipped something too. That's when Reed also had that ATO 3, they sub in Reed for Gobert at the 3:30 mark down 2, and Reed got that shot off the
Yes.
DiVincenzo screen with Randall assisting. So I mean, these are the runs. It's Lakers up 107-105. Then Minnesota scores 6 straight points to go up by 4 on that DiVincenzo and 1. And then the Lakers scored 6 straight points right back to go up 2 and cause a timeout with 129 left.
Yeah, and then
you're going to talk about that.
And then the Lakers didn't score again. Yeah. So, but on those 2 possessions, so Reeves makes that 3 that after the next play, so then it's the same basic thing. I thought that Edwards overhelped, but Reeves hit this one, so that 3 makes it from a 4-point lead almost immediately to a 1-point lead. It was a very quick play. Oh, and there was the interesting thing. Julius Randle fouled LeBron with exactly 2 minutes on the clock. I believe the way that is adjudicated is that just like on an 8-second violation, you treat it as if there are extra decimals on it. So 2 minutes means that there's more than 2 minutes left. So it didn't trigger the bonus or anything like that. Then
yeah, that would have been big though had they called that trip on McDaniels pressuring Luka in the backcourt, which we'll get to. But as it turned out, the Wolves didn't commit another foul, so it didn't matter that wasn't their first in the last 2 minutes.
And then after his immensely successful drive, the one before, DiVincenzo tries it on LeBron. LeBron knocks his shot away.
Yeah, well, and that was awesome too because they tried the same play where DiVincenzo was doing like a little split cut screen for Naz Reid up to the top, but DiVincenzo slipped it, and LeBron knew exactly what they were running, was all over it, and then just got up off of 1 foot and he was so high up to block that shot. Like, it was a ridiculous play, ridiculous awareness. Again, for him being 40 was absolutely the fact that he's evoking 9 years later memories of his block on Andre Iguodala. Ridiculous.
And he was in his 30s then.
Yeah. And then so that actually sandwiched and got them transition for a Finney-Smith 3 to go up 2. And then out of the timeout, the Wolves actually didn't score.
No.
Because they doubled Edwards, gave it up to Reed. They couldn't get it back to Edwards. He tried to just go one-on-one at LeBron and immediately got stripped. And then there was the LeBron 3 that he went for to ice it that I talked about where he could have driven and didn't.
The Festus Ezeli Memorial 3-pointer.
Well, this is even further out than that. And then they doubled Ant again on the left wing. He dribbled out of it, got the pass to Reed at the free throw line, and that set up the McDaniels dunk.
Well, and
Reeves.
That's the point I want to talk about, especially when you consider this was a 1-point game. Austin Reeves did.
Well, it's a 2-point game at that point.
Yes, it's a 2, but no, it's with the final margin.
1-point game at the end.
Yes. So Austin Reeves does, other than like fouling a guy in the air, that kind of, or something dirty, my least favorite kind of foul, which is you screwed up. You can, and so you try to get there late. You commit the foul that doesn't affect them making the shot at all. And so basically you're just giving them a chance at a free point. And boy, does it hurt to give up a free point when you eventually lose by 1. And we're in the final minute. It's just, you just need to hold back. It's one of the dumbest fouls that people can commit in basketball. And so instead of
it was Manu Ginobili-esque.
Yes.
On Dirk Nowitzki. Like, that's what it reminded me of. I said that on the broad.
And so McDaniels makes the and 1 with 39 seconds to go. And instead of it being a tie game, the Lakers are down 1. And that sets up a totally bizarre situation where Luka's getting pressured by Jaden McDaniels and he falls down. JJ Redick says after the game, Luka doesn't fall down. And I'm like, oh no, he falls down all the time. It did turn out that Doncic stepped on Jaden McDaniels' foot, but it was possible. Like, I mean, a lot of people kind of have that, like, especially if you're a Lakers partisan, have the like, oh, if you fell down, obviously it's foul. If you don't see it in that sort of a circumstance, they also did give the timeout instead of like, falling down. I wouldn't have called that a turnover or anything like that, travel. But So, but what happens is it took a long time for all of that to resolve. Is that the Lakers were because Redick, they had one timeout left. He didn't use the timeout to advance the ball here. Could
No,
have,
they
but
had 2 timeouts left, I think, at this point.
oh, you're
And
right, they did.
because they
granted one for
prelude
Luka.
to all this
Yeah.
was with 39.2 left. They should have taken a timeout to advance the ball and get the
To
2
get a
for
faster
1,
shot. Yeah, that's
down
right.
1. And then Luka, regardless of whether he had been tripped or not, he was barely gonna. He probably, if he hadn't been tripped, he was gonna get an 8-second violation.
Or would have had to
And
chuck it or something.
yeah, so and that's why they're still in the backcourt. They had to throw it into the front court, and that's why the passing window was so small. And going back to the foul issue, yeah, Luka was not going to get it across half court. I think the referees just like didn't want to bail him out, and also like there is a boy who cried wolf component to this, because in this game, like he did get tripped a few times, but like also he just falls down a lot. Like he's one of the bigger floppers in the league, and McDaniels pressures him up really well. And so it seemed like when you are totally in trouble, I think the referees are just, especially at that point in the game, when you've already made a bad play and you're about to turn it over, they are less likely to want to call a foul, and particularly don't want to call it because like they've literally called 4 fouls already with McDaniels going alongside Luka. Maybe it was 3, but a lot going alongside Luka and Luka falling down. And you just, as a referee, you just like, you almost like want some variety in the game. Like you just can't keep calling the same foul over and over again, and particularly not. But it all was blown by Redick not taking time out to set up the 2 for 1.
Well, especially because the Lakers are so slow getting into everything all the time. So you have to kind of take that decision. You have to take that part of it off the table when you're down.
And they've been running really good set plays. That's the other thing. Maybe they had something set up, but I also credit McDaniels for, at that point in the game, deciding that he was going to pressure him up. It was a good decision to prevent them from getting the 2 for 1 once they had blown it by not calling the timeout. And then the Lakers did have one more timeout left, and they could have taken it because they didn't have a great passing window. Luka did not meet the pass. Because they had to throw it in the front court, Randall was able to align himself guarding the inbounder to make the pass really difficult. So LeBron couldn't really throw it directly to Luka because of the pressure from Randall. And then I think it was McDaniels who came in from behind and got the steal. So then they double Edwards on the ensuing play.
8 second differential.
Yeah, so don't need to foul for the Lakers. They double him, get it out of his hands. He tries to get it back. They deny him. So DiVincenzo drives in the lane. Edwards, as he's done a lot of times this series, one of his counters is he'll go back door. He almost runs right next to DiVincenzo, and DiVincenzo actually just dropped the pass off for him. I thought it was a pretty good pass. Maybe Ant wasn't expecting it. And then he gets stripped by LeBron again, goes down. Chris Finch, fantastic challenge in that spot. And the Wolves, poetic justice, benefit from the Jaden McDaniels rule that was put in because in this situation last year, Jaden McDaniels was fouled by Kyrie Irving, and it was obviously a foul, but it was off Jaden McDaniels technically, and they couldn't give the ball to the Wolves. And so they put in this rule because of that play, and they went even further than the WNBA, which I don't think they should do. I think it should just be out of bounds in favor of the team. I don't think you should make it a foul. They had 1.9 in the shot clock at that point, but because they were in the bonus, it was a foul. You saw the replay. You saw that overhead camera angle. Was it a foul?
I'm not sure. I would lean, so the overhead camera, which a former Wolves general manager might describe in this case as manna from heaven, would
oh man,
also Darko Milicic, so but so I think LeBron made contact with the wrist, but I also agree LeBron was asked about a post game that like it happens all the time. Like when you watch it from the normal camera angles, it doesn't look like a foul at all.
Yeah, the baseline camera, we were like, no, not a foul.
But we still supported the challenge because the other nuance of this game is that it was a 1 point margin, which means that it's very unlikely to go to overtime. So you're probably going to it's like it's your best shot at it. And I mean, I didn't expect it to be as successful as it was.
Yeah, now, there was a little bit of a risk because had the Lakers come back and scored with time still remaining on the clock, they would have been out of timeouts. It was their last timeout. They wouldn't have been able to advance it, but that was pretty far into the future,
Mhm.
potentially. And I would not have overturned it, I don't think. I mean, the overhead view.
I don't think I would have either, but I'm,
Yeah.
like you see the contact with the it's tough to say that when you see that, but I think it wouldn't be a foul if in 99% of circumstances.
So yeah, it wouldn't have been. Now, what they showed is this overhead view that showed LeBron's hand coming down on the wrist of Edwards. But what you can't see from that view is what got hit first.
Right.
Because it looked to me that maybe it was like the heel of his hand hits the ball first, knocks it away, and then maybe he hits the wrist a little bit afterwards. It was very close. I mean, I understand why they went that route. It was, I mean, good challenge. If the call on the floor has to have any weight, I couldn't really be sure. I would have just let it be out of bounds. But Edwards, again, 2 more ice free throws. And at this point, there is some controversy, which I want to go back into the play-by-play and see if I can figure this out.
So
Because,
the ESPN play-by-play doesn't, so it's interesting because you and I, by virtue of some of our other work, have access to the like basically the equivalent of the official box score. And that's where things got interesting because we're watching it live. So because the nuance of this challenge is that the timeout was originally called after it was an out of bounds by JJ Redick.
yeah,
And so
and
it
it
is
was called by him because he felt it's LA ball and they could advance the ball,
right.
potentially, if that's what they wanted to do.
However, when a team calls a timeout and there is a theoretical reason for the other team to want to challenge, then the other team, in this case the Timberwolves, has 30 seconds to initiate that challenge, which Minnesota did. They ended up being successful. So the box scores all say the Lakers timeout, and then doesn't clarify it. However, because you and I are doing the live call and I'm on the NBA box score, I distinctly remember that the official box showed after that, before the inbound, that the Lakers had a timeout left. I am choosing to interpret it that because it also is what makes sense that
Yeah,
they
and they said the Lakers lose their timeout. I thought they were saying the Wolves and just made an
misspoke.
error, but
So that is worth it is something worth like pursuing because basically if the Lakers had a timeout left, they absolutely should have used it. Because you're trying to get it, and because when you're down 3, Minnesota didn't use this, and I was going ballistic on the broadcast. When you're down 3, inbounding in your own half is really, really hard because the other team should just foul you because there's no chance that they're ever going to call it a 3-shot foul.
But in any event, if the Lakers didn't have their timeout left, it actually, I think, played into their hands because there was no timeout and they pushed it up and the Wolves didn't really have a chance to foul. We were saying foul and foul in the backcourt. I think they wanted more time to run off rather than just fouling Luka in the back, up 3. Luka kind of gets trapped along the sidelines. Then Julius Randle comes over. He tried to give the foul. I went back and watched it. He clearly did try to give the foul, but Luka gets off the ball, gets it to LeBron, and LeBron just immediate quick pass to Reeves in the corner. And there is nobody there. Like Austin, like you're never going to get a more open 3 to tie the game. And it all happened because there wasn't a timeout. And then they were able to go full court. And the Wolves, for whatever, I mean, I don't know whether Randall was just decided to foul on his own or why they didn't take it earlier, whatever it is, but they basically had the worst of both worlds and gave up a wide open 3. So you can't say that the Lakers were prejudiced at all. There's no way they would have got a better shot than that. And Reeves just missed it. He could have tied the game. Is there anything to say about this series going forward here?
I think the Lakers have a totally credible shot to win game 5. They have a totally credible shot if it goes to a game 6 to win a game 6, and then they would have a home game 7. I do think now, especially that it happened 2 games in a row, that Chris Finch understands more what he has with the Edwards driving, no Gobert on the floor. I'm not saying Gobert should play, but understanding that he has a killer lineup too, and that they will use it a little bit more consistently to create problems for the Lakers and improving Minnesota's offensive floor. I think that's enough for them to feel very good about winning this series, but it's not assured. This is not the same as a series we were about to talk about where the superior seed is up 3-1. In that series, it basically takes everything going right for the other team for them to come back. It has happened, but it is extremely rare. In this case, it's possible that the Lakers come back and win the series.
Yeah, I think that's true, although they certainly feel out of gas. The other thing that stuck out to me just from this game, and we've talked about this before, but in just evaluating Anthony Edwards' impact, the fact that he is a superstar guard that you can't go at on defense with LeBron or Luka,
Mm-hmm.
they don't even think about trying to target him. That's just so massive. How many superstar perimeter players are there? Like, and I would say Edwards at this point is like a better offensive player, probably at least in the playoffs, than like Jason Tatum. I mean, again, they're going up against the Wolves, right? Jason Tatum's going up against or going up at Lakers. Jason Tatum's going up against the Magic. Like, there's a pretty big difference there, to be sure. So let's see Edwards against a real defense, which frankly this is not. They're doing the best they can, but they're exhausted and they're small and they don't play great perimeter players. Like their best, they've probably 2 good defensive players. Finney Smith, who I would say is even kind of below average as a playoff perimeter stopper at this point in his career, and he just switches anytime anyway. And LeBron, and that's it. And they don't have any kind of a big. So this is not a good playoff defense. But the fact that you can't just go at him on the other end, and that in fact they avoid him and he actually makes plays, and that is absolutely massive. And that he pretty much has erased Austin Reeves from the series as a playmaker. He's just turned him into a spot up shooter. It took like an unbelievable move by Austin Reeves to score his 1 2-point field goal in this game. That's massive. And surely, like, the Wolves have been in a pretty dominant situation in a series before, 2-0 going home against Denver last year. If you're Minnesota, the way that these 3-1 comebacks start is you just get blown out and you don't compete at all in game 5. They might lose game 5, but they need to actually make it a real game and tire out the Lakers. This is our last 2-day break of the series coming up here. So, like, if the Lakers just win by 25, I'm going to be like, like you don't want to just, like, part of the reason 3-1 is so valuable is, yeah, you probably have like a 35-40% chance of winning game 5. You have to take advantage of that. Like, if you just put it all on game 6, don't want to be in that position. Like, they barely beat the Lakers in these 2 games. Easily could have lost either one of them.
Right.
Okay, let's turn now to a controversy-filled ending in Detroit.
Yeah. And I do want to spend some time before we get to the ending on the meat of this game, because I found it a fascinating contest for a number of different reasons that kind of in some ways aligned with my criticisms of each of these teams and their coaches. And the big point you and I ended up doing the end of this game for playback was, I really liked a phrase that Tim Legler used on the call of the first half, which was, he said, your offense has to give you a chance. He was referring to the Detroit Pistons at this point. And the Pistons offense in the first half, particularly the first, let's call it 18 minutes of the game, didn't give them a chance. Overall, in that first half, the Pistons they turned it over 12 times, and of those 12, 8 of them were steals. Let me check. Nope, that's a 6. 6 of them were steals. And they also were 2 of 16 from 3, including an 0 for 5 from Malik Beasley. And so everything's going wrong for the Pistons offensively in the first half. And just clocked it a little bit in my head. I'm like, the Knicks should be up a lot more than they are. Because when nothing goes right for a team, the expectation should be that that won't continue forever. And the Knicks at halftime were only up 7 when the other team can't put the ball in the basket and is giving you the ball every single time. And it just kind of clocked it. And I'm like, this could be a problem for the Knicks. And it ended up being that way, even though they won the game.
At one point early in the second, the Detroit Pistons had 10 turnovers and were 0 of 10 from 3.
Yep.
Yeah, that was pretty remarkable. Both teams were actually killing on the offensive glass early. And, the Knicks offense was running pretty well. The other problem, again, was Tobias Harris getting into foul trouble early in the third quarter. That just really hurt. Like, that just caused the game to really open up for New York. And also, the Pistons then just went with more offensive guys. So the game opened up a ton in the second half. Particularly then in the last 5 minutes when it seemed like each team was hitting ridiculous shots and scoring a ton. Brunson and Towns both had 3 fouls right at the start of the third quarter. How did you think things went with Cade Cunningham in this game for the Pistons?
He definitely had he was a part of the turnover barrage in the first half. Eventually had a really nice stretch. That was in the third, right? Where he was getting to his spots.
Yeah, he had, I think, and I don't even know what his full third quarter numbers are.
I have him.
Yeah. Let's hear it because they were ridiculous.
12,
as the Pistons outscored them 28-14 in the third quarter.
There are a lot of ridiculous stats from that third quarter, but Cade Cunningham is a good place to start. 12 points on 6 of 7 from the field, all 2s. Also had 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and only 2 turnovers. So he scored or assisted on 11 of their 12 made baskets.
Yeah, it was a pretty insane performance by him. Ended up with 42 minutes and did have a good game with a triple-double, 11 23 from the field, 25 points. So it was not really able to get to the basket. It was a lot of mid-range for him. And the rotations for the Pistons, they gave Ron Holland a little bit. Paul Reed struggled some on the defensive glass in his time, but he was actually +8. Most of that coming, I think, at the end of the third. But he only played 8 minutes. They even went with no center at the end of the first half. But Asar Thompson really struggled. Not a good weekend for the Thompson twins at all. And he's so freaked out by Brunson's foul drawing that he basically is just playing defense behind his back. And there was one 3 that Brunson hit in his face where he just didn't even try to contest it. And I'm like, dude, Dennis Schroeder manages to move his feet without fouling. And you have great length. You don't have to get your body onto it, but you do have to actually use your hands. Because if you have your hands behind your back, you can't even really move that well.
Yeah, that's true.
And you need to deflect a pass. It's one thing if you're you don't want to get your body into him so you can flop and draw a foul. I got that, but you got to get a hand up, jump to the side of him at least. So he just wasn't effective, I thought, against Jalen Brunson. We thought, at least I did, right before we came on the broadcast, I thought Jalen Brunson was going to be done for the playoffs. Dennis Schroeder was pressuring him up late third, knocks it away from him. Schroeder actually had a couple of plays where he knocked it away from Brunson. Mm-hmm. And Schroeder dives for the ball. Not nearly as crazy a play as the one that LeBron had.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that at all.
No, we didn't. We didn't even talk about the fight in Clippers Nuggets either yesterday. We have to talk about Michael Porter Jr. possibly getting suspended. But I think though, if he were going to get suspended,
I think it would have come out on Sunday. I guess that game's
not till Tuesday, huh?
Oh, that's Tuesday, right.
So we might still find out tomorrow. But anyway, yeah, that dive by LeBron, Ant. I thought he had suffered a really bad eversion ankle sprain. Nope, popped right up and just went ahead and was the best player in crunch time again. So Brunson I thought it was a knee issue, and people were concerned about his ankle because it is that right ankle, but uh, shoot, I didn't think this one was a dirty play like that. He didn't just like lay out and go like through his legs. He was just kind of going sideways, and like Brunson just kind of got caught underneath him like that. It wasn't nearly as bad as the LeBron play. Even the LeBron one, he did kind of hit the ball. Like it was a great play to get to the ball. But in any event, so contact to the outside of the knee, and Brunson just goes down immediately. I'm like, oh, that's like the classic MCL sprain injury. And then when he kind of scooted to the table, stood up, and then when he tried to walk, he just like went down again. I was like, oh, that is like his knee. If he can't even walk, he's in trouble. And then I saw him on the bench. He had like some sort of a device on his knee. I thought he was going to try to come in with like a knee brace or something, but no, he just came in. He was pretty much fine. He was limping around a little bit. Maybe there's a possibility it could swell up. And you remember Jimmy Butler, he was looking a lot worse than Brunson was, obviously. He suffered that MCL injury in the play-in last year and then just wasn't able to play anymore after that. But this was obviously not that bad. Thank God. Like I
Thank
thought I was
goodness.
just like, oh, that's it for him. Like it really looked bad.
Yeah, and I want to that his comeback occurred in the fourth quarter. I want to do a couple more ridiculous stats on the story of the third quarter because I thought
Yeah.
it was a really important swing. So the New York Knicks and David Guthrie and crew, who are going to get a lot of criticism for what they did at the end, they also did something in the third quarter, which I truly hate for an officiating crew, which is they completely changed the way they were calling fouls around the basket. Basically, they just decided that it was the 80s again and that anything around the basket was fine. And so the combination of that and the Pistons aggressively loading up around the basket led to the New York Knicks converting exactly 1 of 14 in the paint in just the third quarter. And
Dude,
those
the Knicks were 9 of 28 at the rim for the game.
yeah. And
That's unbelievable. I can't believe I hadn't seen that until now that there was that bad for the game. I mean, obviously that most of it was that third quarter, but like they had guys going in and then just like someone would bother them, block their shot, like OG, Bridges, like those guys would try to get to the basket. Towns that just would like either miss it, like want to foul, not get it. Like, it was
and
crazy. The Pistons were playing really hard, but yeah, as you
yeah,
said,
and
they were letting some stuff go.
yeah, we're letting some stuff go. And so the Pistons, so basically, my criticism, first of all, the officiating for just totally changing the standard there, but the Knicks were aggressively pounding their head against a concrete wall when they had other options. The Knicks in that same quarter were 4 of 6 from 3. They had shooters on the floor for a lot of that time. Like in that third quarter, Karl Anthony Towns played 9 minutes of it. Brunson didn't get hurt until the end of it, so he played 9 minutes. You know, Bridges was out there for pretty much the whole quarter. So, like, you have guys who could shoot. You can do things other than drive against 3 guys standing around the basket. And so I thought it was a real failure from Tibbs and the Knicks players executing. They also turned the ball over 4 times. Some of those were trying to pass it in tight quarters, all that kind of stuff. And that also helped the Pistons get transition opportunities, which was really their best chance to score because the Pistons could not score in the half court in this game. They had a 76 half court offensive rating in this game. The Knicks were only slightly better at 89, but remember the context here. And so the Pistons were able to get a little bit more in transition. And so I thought that the Knicks really they gave the Pistons a lot of ammunition for the run that they eventually went on. And so instead of it being a significant deficit for the Pistons that they don't have the offensive firepower to overcome, the Knicks put up a 58 offensive rating in the quarter, and the Pistons are able to establish a real lead. They're up 7 at the end of the third.
One thing that I probably haven't commented on enough in this series is because the Pistons only have the one creator, like Shooter is okay, but that's for a playoff offense. You certainly wish you had someone better. Cade playing 42 minutes a game, and especially as how exhausted he was, like by the end of game 2, for example, that's really hurt the Pistons transition game. It was still their best weapon, obviously, but Cade just was running it down teams' throats all season. They're the number 1 offense in terms of transition frequency, and yeah, these have been lower possession games. It certainly favors the Knicks the slower it gets, so because They just have way better shot makers, which you saw with what Brunson and Towns did at the end of this. Also, again, I'm going to be critical of JB Bickerstaff. He did have a really good timeout with about 7 on the shot clock with nothing happening. It was one of his automatics. There was nothing happening on the possession. He's like, all right, I'm just going to take this time out here. And then he set an ATO up for Malik Beasley early in the fourth to get a big shot. But again, Tobias Harris gets in foul trouble. He did try, I want to say, 2 possessions of Asar Thompson guarding Karl-Anthony Towns. One of them, Asar Towns like got it in the post and kind of went right through Asar, who was just like not being that physical. Again, I think the Brunson flop fest in the first 2 games just like really got into his head. And I think Towns they came over and helped. I think Towns just like got stripped and went out of bounds or something on that play. But it wasn't promising because like Towns just kind of went right through him. And like Tobias Harris has been really good in this series. Like you wonder where this was all of his years in the playoffs in Philly, where he totally disappeared. Maybe because he just is trusted to do more, but he was making all these hustle plays. He's guarding Towns. Now part of the problem is he'd be miscast having to guard smaller players that he couldn't guard, but he's been good on Towns. But then he gets into foul trouble, and it's Jalen Duren on Karl-Anthony Towns time, and it basically was the rest of the way. Even when Harris came back in the fourth, it still was Duren on Towns. I was critical of that after game 3. They didn't fix it. They didn't consider trying someone like Simone Fontecchio, who's really probably the only other guy if Asar wasn't going to do it. I mean, in any event, they should have tried Fontecchio at some point in the series because they're just all offense or all defense. I know Fontecchio hasn't shot well this year, but he's just one of the few guys on this team who has even a remote chance of being able to shoot and play defense. And like I realize that he's coached up Hardaway and coached up Beasley some, but like those guys are not like they can't guard Karl-Anthony Towns, right? I think Fontecchio it's just to not even try it in this series when you have a weapon who's hard to deal with like Karl-Anthony Towns, and there's just so obviously one dominant strategy of not putting your primary rim protector on him and just making his life hard by not giving up pick and pops or giving up easy closeouts to him. Like that's I think just give the guy 5 minutes. Like if you're gonna play Ron Holland 5 minutes, like you can find some time for Fontecchio. I think they probably should have played Fontecchio over Holland. Frankly, Holland's had a few moments, but he's not an experienced player. Like he's never someone who's gonna like. There's some upside from playing Fontecchio. I know he hasn't had a good year, but he had a good year last year. Like he did. The only thing he didn't do was make shots. So
2 other important mistakes that help set the table for the fourth quarter. One, the Pistons did not have a challenge because JB Bickerstaff used it basically 5 minutes into the game on a you want to walk through the call?
Yeah, the score was 10-8 at the time.
Yep.
And Cade got the ball knocked out of his hands, and so he immediately motioned for a challenge. It was a pretty wide circumference challenge motion. He was really getting worked up, getting the elbow into it. So I guess JB wanted to support his star, but as it turned out, it wasn't a foul, and it just went off of Cade, and maybe a close play, but again, just not a high leverage enough play to challenge at that point.
Yeah, to me, the only way you would challenge something like that is if you were, for whatever reason, like 100% sure you were going to win, and then you use it to get an extra possession.
Yeah.
And
Cade was 100% sure, but just especially with the crowd going crazy that early into the game, it's just very easy to get yourself worked up. I mean, frankly, guys get embarrassed and they say that it's the referee's fault for not calling a foul, and they ask for a challenge. Like that's part of it. You don't want to look like you just lost the ball.
Yeah, it's the old.
You want it to be someone else's fault.
What was the funny thing that Blake Griffin did one time when he like missed a dunk? He looked at his shoe or something. I tried to remember. There was something funny that he did once. But then the other one was at the end of the third quarter. So the Pistons are up. At this point, they've taken a 71-64 lead. Malik Beasley hits a 3 on the last full possession. Cam Payne gets the ball stolen by Dennis Schroeder with about
but by the way,
seconds.
after Cam Payne at the start of the second quarter, for the second time in this series, denied the ball in bounds and forced a turnover at the start of a quarter. But then Payne got a taste of his own medicine from Schroeder.
And so Schroeder steals the ball. It seems like Schroeder just could have gotten the layup himself and passes it to Tobias Harris, who also could have gotten a
No,
layup.
it was Hardaway.
Oh, it was Hardaway.
Was coming down, and
That's right.
Hardaway went for the dunk, and it was late.
And it was late. And so instead of getting 2 points, they got 0 points. I'm sure the Pistons wish they had gotten those 2 points. And then,
Yeah, I mean, maybe Schroeder thought he had more time than he. I mean, he made it obviously, like, you can't blame him too much because he made a great play to even create the situation.
sure.
But yeah, it was obviously late, and just like he could have. He's a fast guy. He slowed down. He passed it. Like it would have been faster for him to go in for the layup, and he wasn't even really going that hard either. But yeah, that was a killer.
So then, not a ton of scoring in the very beginning of the fourth quarter, but Cade gets 3 points in separate. He got a split free throws and got a jumper. So it went from 7 to 10. Then Jalen Brunson checks back in. And we're wondering kind of how's he going to look? Where's he going to go? And within a couple of minutes, we know, oh yeah, not only is he playing, he looks pretty close to totally fine. And then it becomes, well, can they actually come back? Do they have enough there? And a combination of the Pistons offense going back into the toilet and the Knicks getting some clean looks. They hit a couple threes. Brunson got his driving shots going in. Not only did the Knicks come back, but the Knicks got it within a single possession pretty damn fast. It was about 6 minutes left when they cut the lead to 3 for the first time.
Brunson was awesome. Just incredible shot making in the fourth quarter. Took 11 shots, made 7 of them, and all of them were hard. They were he had a couple of leaners along the right side going up against Schroeder is one bigger guy too, where he just sort of used just enough of his body to lean backwards and kiss it off the glass on the right side. He had, and actually we could just pick it up here down the end because there are a lot of fascinating possessions. So first, Brunson hits one of those really tough pullbacks about 4 minutes to go. The Pistons are closing with Dennis Schroeder in for Asar Thompson. They had their starters in. Again, they had Hardaway instead of Beasley. And Hardaway actually hit some pretty ridiculous shots down the end of this one. After I joked on the show that he had missed more three-pointers for the home crowd than anyone in NBA history, because it seemed like every momentum three he would just miss it, even when he was with the Mavs too. But he did it down the end here, even though he's only 4-13 from 3. Then Brunson gets Hardaway and hits a step back going to his left against Tim Hardaway from the left wing. Just a ridiculous shot, especially if he was having any kind of knee trouble. Like that, for a left-handed player, that's just incredibly hard shot. Now, he knows he can get to it against Tim Hardaway, right? Like, that's what I always say. In isolation, if you can kind of predetermine what you're going to do and know that it's not going to get blocked, it's almost like shooting a practice shot. So your percentage is going to go up there. I thought this was weird that at this point, Mikal Bridges was the main matchup on Cade. I don't know why they felt like Bridges was doing better. He had made a couple of decent plays where Cade got past him and then he competed and was able to kind of harry him from behind. I think he knocked it away on him a couple of times there. But it was just really weird that was the primary matchup because Cade was able to use his body. He got into Bridges' body and hit a jumper on the left baseline. And then
it's not like they had anything else for OG Anunoby to be doing. Like, you put your best defender, and the Pistons weren't screening a lot. It's not like they were really maximizing.
Well, they were involving Brunson in pretty much every action.
Yeah, they were, but they could have gotten back to it, I think, in certain circumstances. But also, just as the base alignment, to me, it should have been OG.
Well, and I thought when they did go back to OG, he got through it better than Bridges did. I mean, also, like, maybe the Knicks could have tried a little pre-switching to keep Brunson out of the action. Like, nothing really like that. And so Schroeder went one-on-one against Brunson. Brunson was giving up almost as many points as he was scoring during this period. Schroeder hit a free throw line jumper on him pretty easily, and Hardaway off a pick and roll. They threw it to Duren when they ran a pick and roll at Towns, and Duren swung it to Hardaway. He shot right over the short arms of Brunson for one of his threes. Then Brunson was on Hardaway. Hardaway did a pick and pop to the free throw line. Brunson couldn't get back. Hardaway scored that one. And then they finally put Brunson back onto Schroeder, thinking that if Schroeder was going to screen for Cade, that was going to work as well. In any event, though, the Knicks keep scoring. First, Brunson, they load over to his side. And there's one play here. Let me see if I can find it here in my notes. But in this one, they load over to Brunson's side. This may not all be in order, but it doesn't really matter that much. And Brunson, in a play that I thought was the sort of play he missed in game 2, sees Duren in particular coming over off of Towns, who's all the way on the opposite wing.
That was only
Duren throws a skip
243.
pass to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, 243. Towns hits a 3. That was a huge play. And then the next play, they finally lock up Jalen Brunson because there's one play where Hardaway hit that huge 3. Actually, I think it was when he hit the one over Brunson. And then he was so excited that Dennis Schroeder comes over to pick up Brunson, and Hardaway just starts guarding him. It's like, no, we don't want you guarding Jalen Brunson, Tim. And that was actually, I think that might have been the play where Brunson hit that step back to his left. Anyway, then Brunson finally gets locked up, throws it to Towns at the top, guarded by Duren. And Towns hits one of the most ridiculous shots of the playoffs. Hard right-handed drive all the way to the baseline behind the backboard. This is starting at the top, too. Like, he was never facing the basket, right? It's not like he started on the wing, went baseline. He was still kind of facing that way and pulled up. He's going 90 degrees away from the basket towards the baseline, turns and shoots it over the corner of the backboard, going to his right and makes it. It was just an insane shot. And that was huge because they're down 4 at that point with under 2 minutes to go. He misses that. Pistons can run it down to under a minute and would have had a 4-point lead in the ball. That was a massive shot.
And so then goes to Cade, and he misses a well-contested mid-ranger. Bridges.
Yeah, so they finally put OG back on Cade at that point, and that mid-ranger just barely spun out. I thought actually Cade got 2 pretty good looks against OG and just wasn't able to make them.
That's fair. And then and then the next trip down, the Knicks offense, they didn't really generate anything, and this was a different form of Karl Anthony Towns bailing them out. So it's the end of the shot clock. They have to get something. They're down 2 with at this point about 50 seconds left, and Towns just pulls from my shorthand with it as Eric Gordon range. He pulls from Eric Gordon range, listed as 27 in the box score, and just drills it. So not only did they get something on the play, they took the lead.
Yeah, after looking like they were dead in the water, Towns hit 2 crazy shots. This one, Duren had a closeout on him, did get in the air, and Towns took a dribble to his right and hit a step back to his right from 27. Again, for a right-handed player who shoots a set shot, Karl Anthony Towns has been made fun of for calling himself the best shooting big man of all time, and he'll just say shit, and he deserves to be made fun of sometimes. And Dirk Nowitzki clearly is the best shooting big of all time. But Towns is the best shooting center of all time from 3-point range. And Dirk Nowitzki could not have made this shot that Karl Anthony Towns. A different era, obviously. Maybe if he had worked on it, you'd say all that stuff. Like, Dirk didn't really have a step back going to his right either. It's a ridiculous shot for a center to be able to hit. And then JB Bickerstaff called timeout, which I didn't care for because it let them get Brunson and Towns out of the game. They put in Mitchell Robinson and they put in Miles McBride, so they didn't have anyone to attack at that point. And so they tried to go after, get Bridges switched on to Cade, which they did, and Cade tried to drive. Josh Hart helped off the strong side corner, Tobias Harris. Cade had overcommitted, knocks it out of bounds, and Cade seemed to think he was fouled. Of course, no challenge remained. I zapprudered it. I couldn't really tell. It was possible maybe that as Cade was trying to lift the ball up, Hart came in and got him on the wrist. That it's possible that if they had really slowed it down and gotten all the replay angles and taken the manna from heaven angle, they might have gotten something, but we never would find out because JB didn't have the challenge left because he fired into the sun. Then the Knicks actually, Schroeder plays great defense on Brunson, knocks it out near the backcourt with 4.3 left. Brunson is about to inbound, and they changed the play call. Really smart. Brunson is pretending like he's going to run into the backcourt. With 4.3 left, Dennis Schroeder should not have been fooled by that. He was like top-siding him, but at mid-court.
Yeah.
And so Brunson just runs into the front court. Everyone else is standing at the half-court line. Brunson goes in. I can't remember who came over to contest a little bit, but Brunson should have just made that layup. He missed it. Pistons get the rebound. They're pushing it up. Karl-Anthony Towns with one of the best fouls to give in NBA history. We usually hate the foul to give. This is the perfect time for it.
Yeah, because the Pistons are pushing the ball down the floor, down one, and also using the foul allows the Knicks to put in better defensive personnel, including taking out Karl-Anthony Towns, who committed the foul.
Yep. I mean, then they're able to get defensive personnel in again. And Cade, they just are like, all right, we're going to clear out, take him, go one-on-one OG. He crossed him up. He got a great look. That is a really good look. He just missed it. Tobias Harris made an incredible play to keep it alive. The ball rolls out to the corner in a 1-point game. Tim Hardaway Jr. picks it up. Josh Hart is closing out desperately. Great pump fake by Tim Hardaway Jr., knowing that he had enough time for it. He wasn't. Josh Hart was there. If he had just shot it, he never would have got it off. Gets Josh Hart in the air. Josh Hart jumped pretty much sideways. And to the point where there was contact, and maybe the official thought that he'd jumped straight up to the side of him, and Hardaway Jr. jumped sideways. It would have been such a melee. The baseline official he doesn't have the perspective to see that, really. Like, he can't really tell whether, like, he doesn't have the depth of field from that angle to see whether Hardaway Jr. jumped sideways or not. Certainly looked like a foul live, though, from our angle on the opposite side. But there just is really no referee in position to see that perfectly. And no foul was called. It should have been a foul. Yep. They admitted it immediately in the pool report afterwards. Those are the breaks. I don't know what else to say. They blew it. I understand why the call wasn't made. The Pistons had plenty of chances to fix it, so they weren't in that position. But Tim Hardaway Jr. would have absolutely won the game for the Pistons. Only had to make 2 out of 3. Would have done that almost certainly. And it would have been a 2-2 series.
Yeah, it's a horrendous call, or no call in this case. And it's both understandable in the moment, but still an incorrect decision by the officials. And we talk about it every playoffs, but there has to be an understanding among all people involved, and that includes us as analysts, that mistakes are going to happen, and we lament that they do and everything else. And if you're within the margin of error, then you can be helped or hurt by fate. And it's a lot easier to fixate on it in this specific circumstance, because this mistake in and of itself changed what could have been a loss. It could have been a win into a definite loss. And that is deeply unfortunate for the Pistons. It was a mistake of a call. We already know that. We don't need the last 2-minute report. It's already been admitted to. It also was. We know the truth. But bad calls are going to happen. Weird bounces are going to happen. And if you're ahead by, if you're not down by 1, if you're ahead by points, then you're not burned by this sort of thing. So it sucks. And the Pistons, it's faint solace that they should have gotten the call, but there needs to be an understanding that not everything is going to be perfect. There aren't the corrective mechanisms. And it's also important to remember that even with the looser challenge rules that they have now, like what we saw for Anthony Edwards' benefit from in the game that immediately followed this one, there wasn't anything to challenge here. So even if JB Bickerstaff had not fired his challenge into the sun, that wouldn't have been available to them either. So it sucks, and there's no sugarcoating that. But that's why you try to be up. I mean, it's just because it can be the other way too.
Yeah, and this was an offensive rebound off a shot that Cade Cunningham missed that he would tell you he should have made, and he would tell you that he shouldn't have turned the ball over. He missed Tobias Harris wide open in the corner on the previous possession, and he also had a shot spin out in the possession before that. And the New York Knicks just made unbelievable shots down the end of this game. Just like every one of those Brunson shots was ridiculous. Towns had one wide open three that he just seems to cash every time he gets an open three. It seems like that's like a good spot up. It's just money. It's unbelievable. Like he's easily one of the best spot up shooters in the NBA. And then those two other shots that he hit, like they're just the Pistons for as well as they played. I mean, they outshot the Knicks from 2-point range, 53% to 33%. The Knicks shot 33% from two, and they had more offensive rebounds. They just couldn't hit a three. They were 7 to 29 from three. Didn't get up enough threes either. And they have one guy who they're going to run the offense through every time. The Knicks just have generally more talent. They didn't Bridges and OG weren't very good, but the Pistons turned it over, at least on offense. I thought on defense, actually, when the Pistons were getting all these turnovers, they finished with 17. Knicks had 11 steals. This was sort of a little bit of the vision defensively, albeit against a limited offense, of Bridges and Anunoby. Like Bridges 3 steals, Anunoby 3 steals, Hart 4 steals. That's what the Leon Rose was thinking when he put this group together, and those guys are just making plays in the gaps and rotating and blocking shots and clogging up the paint, and also just guarding Cade Cunningham one-on-one as well. So those guys played really well defensively. Like it was a great game. Nobody could score until everybody could score down the end.
Oh.
I mean, I still think that even if this was 2-2, it's worth noting that the Knicks would have been in a theoretically dominant position in the series. I thought that if the Knicks continue to play the way they played in the first two games, that the Pistons might be slightly favored going forward, but the Knicks also have the clutch player of the year, and they won both of these close games on the end. Pistons broke their playoff losing streak, but still haven't won a home playoff game since Game 4 of the 2008 Eastern Conference Finals against the Celtics.
Tied the record for most consecutive home playoff losses. One other stray note. Mitchell Robinson's missed free throws in this game were some of the worst I've seen this entire season.
Yeah, I usually look away during free throws to just like check a stat or something, so I missed it. But
bad. They were real bad.
Also, Pistons, I think, have really been hurt by Isaiah Stewart missing the last three. He was questionable with that right knee inflammation. It's a shame that he hasn't been able to play. I thought he was awesome when he was able to play in game one.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, this could have been a very different series, right? Like, Detroit led it by 10 at the start. Like, campaign went on a crazy run in game one. And of course, they could have won this game too. Like, in a different world, they'd be up 3-1, but the Knicks just have a few more playmakers than the Pistons do. And I will say, too, as much as I like the Brunson thing was just killing me after games 1 and 2, totally watchable, totally enjoyable. This was an incredible Jalen Brunson game. 32 points, 13 and 26 from the field, 11 assists, easily his best passing game in the series, and only 2 free throw attempts. And he probably only had like 3 or 4 flops in the game. Like this is like the Jalen Brunson that I really like want to watch and enjoy. And he just was rooting it for me over these as he just has gone progressively floppier and floppier. And then, like, I think he just finally realized that he had gone too far after that game too, and decided to start playing basketball again. And that actually, like, really was great. And it worked. And it was actually, it turned out to be better for him and the Knicks, in addition to being way more watchable, which I love the fact that both of those things are true. Orlando, Boston.
I mean, island basketball largely continued, but the Celtics were able to weather it a little bit better, in part because
for those who that was on Dunc'd On Prime, so this is a public episode. That's what I termed the game that the Magic won in Game 3, because it wasn't just like an ISO fest. They were not helping on anyone ever. and they held the Celtics to their lowest number of 3-point attempts in game 3 by 6. And the Magic had actually held them to their second lowest during the regular season at 33. And so basically the game continued in exactly that fashion tonight.
And so a 93 possession contest that so the Celtics actually with 107 actually had about around an average offensive rating. But so with no help principles, you get interesting things like in the shot charts, Boston being 15 of 19 in the restricted area because when they got there, there was no one there, or there was someone there and they got fouled because the Celtics also took 32 free throws in this game, all of which were by their starting five, 14 for Tatum, 10 for Jaylen Brown, and they going 30 of 32 on those was another huge factor in Boston's favor and why they were able to be reasonably efficient on offense despite yet again missing a ton of threes. They were 9 of 31. Though of course the Magic worse because the Magic can't shoot.
Yeah, but those are largely either rushed or off the drill. Like Kristaps Porzingis only got up 4. For example, they were switching everything and then they're just playing that island basketball, and they don't, like, the Magic don't play really any bad defenders. Maybe Caleb Houston. He did attempt it too though. He missed it, of course. But he was negative 10 in 13 minutes. And Anthony Black actually had himself a reasonable stretch in the second half, but he was negative 16 in 18 minutes because he's just a little bit too thin. And of course, they had to go to Gary Harris again. Didn't do anything on offense, but got his usual strip of someone trying to attack him in isolation under the basket. Even John Isaac didn't play much. They just went, and like Corey Joseph was really good in this game. He even drove into the lane against guys and was setting people up a little bit. He had 6 assists, was 2 of 4 from 3. But of course, it turned into the Franz and Paolo show again. Paolo was 12 of 32 from the field, just a lot of mid-rangers. When you consider he took 32 shots, 9 free throw attempts, not that much, especially when you only make 5 of them. So, had 4 turnovers, only 3 assists. So it really was just go one-on-one. Anytime someone could get a system bucket, it was huge. Like Franz Wagner could go downhill at least a little bit on Porzingis or Luke Cornett in a drop coverage and was able to finish pretty well at the rim, but also was 2 of 7 from 3. And then the Celtics got just enough out of Porzingis slipping to the basket. Instead of popping, he was rolling hard and beating the switch that way. He got, I think, 8 points in the first half on those plays. So they found just enough, and then they're able to lock down defensively and close it out with a few big buckets from Tatum late.
Well, I got a little bit triggered by their I don't know if it was, I think it was just on the screen in the arena, not on the Magic broadcast, but they had a thing, they posted a graphic about players under, I think it was under the age of 25, most consecutive 30 plus point playoff games. And so they had Paolo there, or most 30, maybe it was just 30-point games, not
most consecutive 30-shot playoff games.
Well, so that's the thing is, so Paolo Banchero, he has scored he's scored 27 or more, or maybe it was 25 plus point games because he's now done that for 7 straight playoff games now. But of those 7 straight playoff games to get those 25 or more points, he has been over 50% from the field exactly twice. One of the games against the Cavs, and then game 1 of this series against the Celtics. So I think in some ways it's more an accomplishment of being that young and being entrusted to take that many shots rather than a true scoring accomplishment.
We can move on. You got anything on this series? I was just saying that the Celtics didn't look incredible, but also the Magic defense is well situated to defend them.
I would be interested to see how much of this conceptually could work if the Magic could replace one of their guys with someone who is capable / superior offensively. Would the whole concept not work anymore? I'm not entirely sure. I think
but that guy's not going to be able to guard anyone, probably.
Presumably.
That's available to them.
And
so it's really, I think you're better off just trying to find a shooter who can guard somebody a little bit. But even that player is pretty hard to find. Now, Jalen Suggs is one of those guys. And I mean, you just hope for internal improvement. Like Wendell Carter Jr. to me, at least in this series, has really shown his value defensively, and he just needs to become a little bit better of a spot up shooter. But I don't think he's the problem with the Magic.
No,
I don't think that getting some great role man is going to be like maybe that'd be good with Franz, but then you're probably just going to be switching anyway, right? Like I think of all the things they need someone who can make shots and hopefully not just suck on defense.
And at bare minimum, I think they need somebody who can create good shots on the second unit. Like you need to have a different concept there. I think you sacrifice some of the defensive integrity for somebody who's better, but we'll talk about that when we do their offseason preview. The Celtics are going to win this series. I think they're going to win it in 5. And presumably they can do that without Drew Holiday, so he can get a lot more additional rest, and we can start to prepare ourselves for what's looking like an increasingly inevitable Celtics Knicks tilt in the second round.
Well, and Cavs Pacers are going to be pretty good too. We're however it ends up happening, I think we're looking at a pretty awesome second round. I mean, the only one I'm probably not that excited for would be Celtics Knicks, but there's at least like enough talent in that series that it'll be interesting. You know, it's not like just the Knicks are boring.
Right.
All right, that is going to do it for today. And thanks to everyone who joined us on Playback. A reminder that you can join us live and ask some questions. These are pretty late, so I realize it's not ideal for everyone, but you can join us live after the games. We'll be doing Sunday and Thursday nights as our tentative plan, but maybe Wednesday sometimes if Thursdays aren't that good. So if you want to listen to the show live, get in, ask a question or two, and you can also, of course, hear our live calls. You heard some of that at the beginning of this episode as well from playback.tv/Nate Duncan NBA. Hope that you will join us there. If you've tried it before and you couldn't sync up, there now actually is a ability to pause and sync up more easily, or you can use a VPN and just get the whole game in our window as well if you have NBA League Pass. Talk to y'all tomorrow night on Dunc'd On Prime. Thanks again.